In the heights of heaven, a gathering took place unlike any before. Before the great white throne stood the Eternal, and beside him, the Lamb, Jesus, radiant as fire refined. The hosts of heaven trembled, their light dimmed by the gravity of the moment. From the throne came a voice that rolled through eternity like the birth of thunder. The hour has come. The earth will pass away, but my word will not. The heavens fell silent. Creation itself waited for the next breath of God. Then the voice spoke again, not as a whisper, not as a plea, but as a decree. It was not the tone of desire, it was the tone of inevitability. The command that would shake worlds had been given. Angels of every order, seraphim, cherubim, archangels, bowed as one, their glory paling before the light that emanated from the throne. Justice had risen, and mercy, though eternal, had reached its end of time. Gabriel, the messenger of Annunciation, stepped forward. His face carried the weight of unspoken sorrow, yet his gaze did not waver. "Lord," he asked, "how shall we proceed? What message shall we deliver to mankind?" Heaven held its breath. For a moment even light itself seemed to pause. When God finally spoke, his voice shook the expanse of creation. "My justice was born from love, but the time is no more. Humanity has chosen its path. The judgment will be righteous, but without mercy." A tremor coursed through the heavens. The word justice resounded across the firmament like thunder upon an unseen sea. Uriel, keeper of wisdom, raised his voice. "Is there no more hope, Lord? No hand to intercede?" But the throne remained unshaken. "All has been given," said the voice, "and they have turned away from my mercy. The balance of justice has tilted. The hour of truth has come." Then Michael, the archangel of war, stepped forward. His armor shone like molten stars, and in his hand he held a spear forged in the edge of eternity. "We are ready," he said. "The destiny of man is sealed. The sword of truth will not fail." And God, in his holiness, answered only with a word, "Go." The sound of that word split heaven in two. The light swelled. The winds of judgment stirred. The first breath of eternity's storm reached the border of the world below, and the earth began to tremble in its core. If this message speaks to your spirit, follow our channel and stand among those who still watch and pray. In the comments, declare your truth. Justice prevails. A silence deeper than time hung over the heavens. The hosts that once sang endlessly now stood still before the throne. Their faces reflected awe, not fear, but the holy weight of a decree that could not be recalled. The word had been spoken, and the word would not return void. Every star, every wind, every fragment of creation seemed to bow beneath the unseen authority that ruled all things. For the first time since the dawn of light, heaven prepared for war, not of hatred but of righteousness. Before the throne, Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, Raphael, and the multitude of divine ranks took their stations. Each awaited the sound that would break eternity's calm, the call of the first trumpet. Before them lay 7 instruments unlike any ever forged. They were not made of metal, nor by angelic hands, but from the essence of creation itself. Each shimmered with a light that told of judgment, a light that revealed rather than destroyed. At the center stood Michael, commander of the hosts, his eyes fixed upon the one seated on the throne. Then a gesture, small, almost imperceptible, passed from the right hand of God. That motion unleashed the most terrible sequence creation had ever known. Michael raised his voice, echoing through realms of light and shadow. "The trumpets are the voice of divine justice. Each sound will proclaim what has been sown and what must now be reaped." The angels bowed their heads, their wings trembling as fire coursed through the skies. No word was spoken again. Only expectation remained. Gabriel approached the first trumpet. Its form glowed like molten gold, its sound waiting within like a storm caged in silence. As he lifted it, the heavens darkened, and the first breath of divine wrath stirred the endless sea of stars. Then he blew. A sound rolled forth, deep, endless, alive. It was not merely heard, it was felt. The heavens shook, the air bent, and upon the earth, forests ignited, mountains cracked, and the soil burned beneath invisible fire. The first judgment had fallen upon the land. Grass, trees, and fruit, symbols of man's abundance, were consumed. The voice of Michael thundered through creation. The earth is judged for the pride of its harvest. It has forgotten the one who made it fruitful. Before the echoes faded, Uriel approached the second trumpet. His hand trembled, not with fear but with reverence. The trumpet gleamed like a piece of the sun itself. When he blew, the sound was sharper, wilder, like the shattering of glass across eternity. Then something vast fell from the heavens, a burning mountain cast into the sea. Waves turned red. The oceans that once gave life now became the tombs of countless creatures. Ships drifted like broken bones upon crimson waters. "The sea," cried Uriel, "has been struck for the greed of men. They have filled it with blood and forgotten that life itself came from the deep." Raphael the healer came next. The third trumpet rested on an altar of emerald stone, glowing with sorrow. When he raised it to his lips, the tone was pure but piercing, like a cry from creation itself. The rivers and springs turned bitter. Men drank, and their lips burned with the taste of corruption. Cities fell silent. Children cried for water that no longer gave life. "The rivers are judged," Raphael spoke softly, his voice carrying through the heavens. "For men poisoned the earth with their hands, and now the waters remember." His tears fell, glowing as they struck the glassy sea below. Then came Tzadkiel, the angel of justice, carrying the fourth trumpet, dark and terrible as the void itself. When its sound broke forth, the heavens dimmed. The sun lost a third of its light, the moon was veiled, and the stars flickered like dying embers. A darkness unlike any night spread across the world, a shadow that reached not only eyes but hearts. People stumbled in confusion. The warmth of day was gone, replaced by the chill of separation. "This is the judgment of blindness," Michael declared. "For men have loved darkness more than light." The fifth trumpet waited in the hands of Jophiel, whose beauty once mirrored divine joy. But joy was gone now, replaced by solemn purpose. When she sounded her trumpet, the earth itself groaned. The ground split open, and from the depths rose a smoke darker than any storm. From that smoke came creatures twisted and strange, born not of creation but of rebellion, spirits long bound beneath the world. They swarmed upon mankind, not to kill, but to torment those marked by unbelief. Cries filled the air. The very sky seemed to recoil. "The abyss has been opened," said Michael, his voice trembling with divine sorrow. "What they worshipped in secret now walks among them." Metatron, the scribe of heaven, stepped forward next with the sixth trumpet, a pale instrument carved from the memory of fallen angels. When he blew, its sound carried the agony of 1,000 wars. From beyond the horizon, legions arose, armies vast as the sands of the sea. Their banners blazed with symbols of nations and powers. They turned their weapons upon one another, and the earth quaked under the weight of human fury. "War upon war," thundered Michael, "for those who live by the sword will die by it." Blood ran through valleys and smoke-covered cities once filled with laughter. When the sixth trumpet fell silent, the heavens dimmed. The angels bowed once more, trembling at what had been unleashed. Yet still one trumpet remained, the seventh. But this final sound did not belong to destruction, it belonged to revelation. Gabriel stepped forward again, his face lit by a sorrowful light. The seventh trumpet gleamed like crystal, silent yet full of promise. As his hand touched it, the voice from the throne spoke once more, "Now the mystery shall be finished. The kingdoms of the world will become the kingdom of my Son." And when the trumpet sounded, it was not a cry of war but of unveiling. The heavens split open, revealing not wrath but glory, the beginning of something beyond judgment, beyond fear, beyond the ruin of man. Yet for that revelation to come, the world had to stand still beneath the echo of justice. The earth quivered, the sky bled with light, and all of creation held its breath. And in that silence after the seventh trumpet, the universe waited, because the next voice to be heard would not be an angel's, but the judge himself. The sound of the seventh trumpet still lingered in the void like smoke after a storm. The heavens, heavy with awe, dimmed beneath the weight of what had been revealed. Yet even as the angels bowed, the throne remained veiled in light, terrible, radiant, pure. From within that brilliance, for seals began to break. Each one echoed through creation like the heartbeat of the Almighty, and with every shatter, the balance of the world trembled. The voice that spoke was the same that had spoken at the dawn of time, "Come." From the depths of the eternal horizon, the first rider appeared. His horse shone white as the morning sun, and yet his light was not warmth but steel. Upon his brow rested a golden crown, and in his hand he carried a bow drawn taut with unseen force. His eyes were cold, reflecting the pride of those who believed themselves victorious. This was the spirit of conquest, the illusion of righteousness cloaked in ambition. Wherever his arrow flew, nations rose in power, men shouted of freedom, and kingdoms expanded their borders. Yet behind every victory lay a throne built on the bones of the innocent. Michael watched from above, his voice solemn. "This rider does not bring peace. He brings dominion in the name of self." The horse thundered across the continents, and humanity knelt before its own reflection. The white light faded, and then the heavens roared again. The second seal broke, and from the rift burst a horse the color of blood. Its rider carried a great sword, its blade burning with the flame of division. He rode not to conquer lands but hearts. At his passing, brothers turned against brothers, and the bond between nations split like fragile glass. His breath was war. Fields that once grew wheat now sprouted fire. His laughter echoed through the cries of the wounded. Peace has been taken from the earth, the voice of heaven declared, and men now slay one another. The rider's sword gleamed over every border, every ideology, every flag. Humanity, drunk with fury, devoured itself. The red horse galloped on, leaving only silence and ash. As the smoke of war rose, the third seal cracked. From within came a horse black as midnight, its hooves slow and heavy as judgment. Upon it rode a figure cloaked in shadow, holding a scale in his hands. No crown, no weapon, no pride, only the measure of consequence. "A quart of wheat for a day's wage," the voice cried from the midst of the throne, "and 3 quarts of barley for a day's wage, but do not harm the oil and the wine." The world shuddered under the weight of famine. Markets collapsed, soil turned to dust, and the rich stored what the poor could no longer touch. Yet the rider's silence was more dreadful than the sword of war. His eyes were empty, reflecting the hunger not of the body but of the soul. Mankind, who once feasted in abundance, now tasted the bitterness of its own greed. Michael whispered, "The scales do not lie. The harvest of selfishness has come." Then came the fourth seal. Its sound was unlike any before, low, hollow, eternal. From the rift emerged a pale horse, sickly and cold, and the one who rode it was Death. His face was neither man nor shadow, but something in between, a mirror of every life extinguished. His breath chilled the sun, his eyes swallowed light. Behind him followed Hades, the grave itself, consuming the remnants of what life remained. Fields lay barren, rivers silent, cities hollow. Even the angels trembled, for this was the last consequence of man's rebellion, the end not only of flesh but of hope. Authority was given to them over a fourth of the earth, came the decree, to kill with sword and famine and plague and by the beasts of the earth. The 4 riders moved as one, their paths crossing in dreadful harmony. Conquest gave birth to war, war to famine, famine to death. And in their wake humanity's arrogance was laid bare. For every throne raised in victory, 1,000 graves whispered in the dust. The earth itself groaned beneath their passing, as if creation longed to flee from its own corruption. From above, the angels watched in solemn silence. Even Gabriel, the voice of announcement, could not speak. Only Michael stood firm, his eyes reflecting both wrath and grief. "This is not the end," he said softly. "It is the mirror before the end, the truth revealed before the final light." In the distance, the riders vanished, swallowed by storm and smoke. Yet their echoes remained. The air was thick with sorrow, and the world below seemed still as though it feared to breathe. Nations that had once shouted of progress now murmured of despair. Kings hid in their palaces, prophets wept in the streets, and the poor lifted their eyes to a sky that no longer answered. The sound of hooves faded into memory, but the wounds they left bled into eternity. The heavens, vast and dim, waited once more. The seals had been broken. The riders had ridden. The first great unveiling of judgment had been completed. But as the last echo of the pale horse vanished into shadow, a new silence descended, one heavier, one deeper than before. It was not the silence of peace. It was the silence before revelation. And in that silence, from somewhere beyond the stars, the throne spoke again. A command yet unspoken. A purpose yet unseen. The angels turned their gaze toward the light, for what came next would not ride, it would descend. The echoes of the riders faded like dying thunder, yet the earth did not rest. Smoke covered the horizon, seas boiled with the memory of blood, and the cries of mankind rose like a single broken song. Above, the heavens stood still. Every angel, from the least to the greatest, awaited the next command. Between silence and fire, the throne gleamed, its light no longer gentle but burning with an unrelenting purity. What had begun as revelation now reached its final measure. The time of warnings was over. The time of judgment had come. Before the crystal sea, 7 angels stepped forward, their garments glistening with the brightness of eternity. Each bore a bowl heavy and shining like liquid fire. The air around them trembled as the glory of God filled the temple. None could enter until the wrath within those bowls was poured out upon the earth. Michael, the commander, bowed his head. Even he, who had faced the darkness of the abyss, felt the gravity of what was about to unfold. From the throne came a single command, soft but absolute. Go and pour out the 7 bowls of my wrath upon the earth. The first angel raised his bowl high. Within it burned a flame that was not of this world, pure, unending, consuming. When he poured it out, the fire scattered across the lands like invisible rain. Men and women cried out as sores and boils appeared upon their skin. The proud were humbled, the powerful fell to their knees. Those who had mocked the name of God found no healer, for the wound was of the soul as much as the flesh. The angel spoke, his voice trembling, "This is the harvest of arrogance. The flesh bears the mark of its rebellion." The scent of smoke rose from the earth, mingling with the sorrow of angels. Then the second angel approached the edge of the firmament, his bowl filled with crimson light. As he tilted it, its contents spilled into the oceans below. The waters turned to blood, thick, dark, lifeless. The sea, once the cradle of life, became a mirror of death. Fish floated like shadows beneath the surface. Ships lay abandoned in the harbors. "The sea remembers," the angel declared. "For the blood of the innocent cries out from its depths, and now the earth answers." Nations that had risen from the strength of their commerce now stared into empty horizons. The world's pulse slowed. The oceans themselves were judged. The third angel followed, solemn and resolute. His bowl gleamed with a light both golden and green, the color of rivers and streams. When he poured it, the light cascaded into the waterways of the world. Rivers turned bitter, fountains became poison. Those who drank found no relief, only the taste of decay. "The waters are judged," the angel said, his voice echoing like a lament. "For they have carried the corruption of men, and now they bear witness against them." Then, from the altar above the sea of glass, another voice replied, "You are righteous, O Lord, who are and who were, for you have judged these things." The angels bowed, acknowledging that even wrath was holy. The fourth angel stepped forward, his bowl radiant as the heart of the sun. When he poured it upon the earth, fire descended from the heavens. The sun grew fierce, its light searing the skin of those below. Cities melted into rivers of stone, the air shimmered with unbearable heat. Yet even in agony, men lifted their fists toward the sky and cursed the name of God. They would not repent. They would not turn. "The fire purifies," the angel cried, "but the hardened heart resists purification." Michael, watching from above, whispered, "Mercy was offered, but pride endured." The earth burned, and the smoke rose like incense before the judgment seat. Then came the fifth bowl, carried by the angel of shadows. His light was veiled in mourning. When he poured it out, darkness fell, not the gentle shade of night, but a darkness that could be felt. It crept through streets, over mountains, into hearts. The throne of the beast, the empire of rebellion, was plunged into despair. Men gnawed their tongues in torment, yet still refused to seek the light. "The kingdom of deception is cast into night," the angel declared. "They have loved lies more than truth, and now their light is taken from them." Across the heavens even the stars dimmed, as if in sorrow for the blindness of mankind. The sixth angel advanced, his bowl heavy as a storm. When he poured it, the great river dried up, making way for armies to rise from the east. Spirits of deception moved among the kings of the earth, calling them to battle. The drums of war sounded again, echoing through desolate plains. "The way is prepared," Michael said, "for the final confrontation between light and darkness." Yet this was not mere conflict of nations. It was the culmination of every defiance since Eden. The armies of the world gathered, unaware that they marched toward the edge of eternity. Then came the seventh and final angel. His bowl glowed with a brilliance that no eye could bear. When he raised it high, heaven itself seemed to lean closer. The voice from the throne rang out, "It is done." The angel poured the last bowl into the air, and the skies tore apart. Thunder rolled like the heartbeat of creation. Lightning split the firmament. A great earthquake shook the earth, so mighty that mountains fell and islands vanished into the sea. The cities of the nations collapsed, and Babylon, the empire of human pride, was remembered before God. Great hailstones, vast as stones of judgment, rained down upon the land. The earth groaned, and yet even in ruin many cursed the name of the Lord. When the final echoes faded, the heavens fell still again. The smoke of judgment rose like a veil over the world. The angels, their bowls now empty, bowed before the throne. None spoke. None sang. The weight of divine justice hung in the air, heavy and irrevocable. What had been declared from eternity had now been fulfilled. Yet amidst the ruin the light of the throne still shone, not diminished but steady, unwavering. For though wrath had fallen, purpose remained. Justice had spoken, now truth would be revealed. The heavens waited, for beyond judgment there was still a mystery untold. And as the smoke of the earth reached the stars, the angels lifted their eyes once more, because something in the heart of heaven was stirring again. The smoke of judgment still hung over the world like a torn veil. Seas remembered blood. Cities remembered fire. The ground itself seemed to tremble with the memory of thunder. Yet above the ruin, heaven stood at attention. Not one wing moved without command. Not one voice rose without leave. In the radiance around the throne, the brightness deepened, as if holiness itself drew nearer to its own horizon. What the trumpets had announced and the bowls had enforced now gathered toward a single point. Justice had spoken. Now defiance answered. From the mouth of the abyss rose a wind that carried no scent of earth. It was old, older than iron and empire, older than the first lie whispered in a garden. Across the dark of the deep moved a presence, proud, cold, unbowed. He was not a king, he was theft dressed as royalty. He was not a light, he was shadow that remembered being light. Names clung to him like broken chains, the accuser, the dragon, the ancient serpent. Where he passed, courage went thin and truth bent like reeds in a storm. His gaze lifted toward the heights and hatred, long caged, found air. The hosts of heaven assembled. Not in panic. In rank. Michael stood at the center, the arc of his armor shimmering like a horizon at dawn. In his hand, the spear of justice waited. No ornament, only purpose. Gabriel took his place, the trumpet now silent upon his chest, the message already given. Uriel, keeper of wisdom, watched the edges where deception loves to hide. Raphael set his face like flint, ready to bind what wounds could still be bound. Their silence was not emptiness, it was consent. The command would come, and when it came, the very air would obey. A sound rippled through creation. It was not thunder. It was the unsheathing of a word. Michael lifted his spear, and the ranks moved as one. Stand, he said, and the command struck the firmament like a bell. Beneath them the world turned as if in sleep. Above them the throne blazed. Between throne and abyss stretched a field with no soil, a sky with no stars, only the space where verdicts are carried out. There the enemy arrived, bearing the echo of 1,000 proud thrones. He smiled and heaven did not answer. Once, the shadow said, "You fought to cast me down." His voice carried the memory of altars overturned and oaths broken. Look at your world now. Fire and ash. Hunger and silence. Was your mercy victory? Was your justice love? His words sought purchase in holy ground and found none. Michael did not argue. The truth does not defend itself, it shines. You desired what was not yours, he replied. You loved your own brightness and called it truth. And every wound the world bears was born of that lie. The first clash was light against absence. No clang of steel. No shower of sparks. A blow landed and the abyss recoiled. The enemy struck back, quick as thought, cold as envy. Waves of night rolled like tides over a fallen sun. Angels met them, wing to wing, shield to shield. Through domains unseen by flesh, the battle spread. Not chaos. Order in motion. Justice enforced. Every stroke meant, every step measured. Where the adversary cast accusation, Michael answered with the testimony of the blood and the word of those who would not recant. Where deceit flared, Uriel drew its outline and broke its spine with clarity. Where ruin reached, Raphael closed its hand upon nothing and turned it away. The earth felt it. Not in trumpet or quake, but in rumor. Children woke from nightmares they could not name. Tyrants looked over their shoulders and saw nothing, and feared it. In the ruins, the poor lifted small prayers that rose like birds through smoke. In palaces, plans paused. In deserts and alleys and cellars, the faithful whispered hope with cracked lips. They did not see the field where heaven fought, but their words joined it. The accuser's voice thinned when the lowly spoke of mercy. It failed altogether when the broken forgave. Rage opened in the adversary like a second mouth. He drew darkness to himself until even angels saw nothing but a wound in the sky. From that wound, he hurled memories, every grief unhealed, every betrayal, every grave cut short of mourning. The weight of it pressed like a mountain. For a breath, the ranks faltered. Then Michael remembered a sentence that does not age, strength made perfect in weakness. He lifted his spear not higher but lower, beneath the weight, under the sorrow, and drove it upward through the lie that pain is final. The sky tore. The wound bled light. The enemy staggered, not from loss of power, but from the sight of it used rightly. Power that does not worship is only hunger. He lashed again. Blades of shadow rained like locusts. Gabriel stepped into their path, not to charm them into flight, but to let them break upon a message already spoken. The hour has come, he said once more, and the words were a wall. Uriel seized the moment and traced the border of the battlefield with wisdom. Lines appeared where none had been. Beyond them deception could not stand. Within them truth moved freely as wind. Then came the long moment, the kind that stretches a breath across an age. The adversary rose higher, drawing the last of his defiance into a single stroke. He aimed not at ranks, not at captains, but at meaning itself. If the world could be split from its maker, if design could be declared random and purpose empty, then even victory would be smaller than despair. He reached for that lie as for a crown. Michael saw it. Raphael felt it. Gabriel heard its silent grammar. Heaven steadied. Enough, Michael said, and it was a prayer as much as a command. He moved. Not fast. Inevitable. Each step answered a theft. Each breath repaid a debt. When he raised the spear, the field of judgment grew quiet. Even the enemy's wings stopped. There was no sound but the pulse of an unseen heart, the one that keeps seas from forgetting their borders and stars from losing their names. Light gathered on the point of the spear. Not the glare of conquest, but the steady fire of what is right. The adversary's smile thinned to a line. He lunged and the distance vanished. For an instant that cannot be measured, shadow and flame met and held. Every oath ever spoken stood witness. Every tear ever shed found weight. The heavens leaned close. And as the strain reached breaking, the battlefield inhaled, as if creation itself needed air for what would happen when the balance finally tipped. The battlefield was silent. The echoes of war had dissolved into stillness, and the air shimmered as though creation itself struggled to remember how to breathe. The darkness that had dared to lift its head now fell back into the abyss from which it came, bound in the chains of its own rebellion. The angels stood in solemn ranks, their armor dimmed by glory and ash alike. The spear of Michael, still burning with holy fire, pierced the emptiness where the last shadow had stood. It was done. Yet even victory seemed small in that moment, for all of heaven knew that the final word had not yet been spoken. Then came the light. It did not rise like the sun, nor descend like a star. It simply was. A radiance beyond sight, a brightness that did not blind but revealed. The sound of many waters filled the expanse, rolling through the vault of heaven, and the voice that once had said, "Let there be light," spoke again, not in creation but in culmination. From the center of eternity came the Word made flesh, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. Heaven trembled, but not in fear. The Lamb who had been slain now stood as the Lion who reigns. His robe was white, dipped in blood, the blood of redemption. His eyes were fire, his crown was life itself. Gabriel fell to his knees. Michael lowered his spear. The armies of heaven bowed as one. From the throne, a command thundered like the birth of a new cosmos: "Open the heavens." And the veil that had separated eternity from time began to tear. Clouds rolled back, revealing a world covered in ruin and silence. Smoke rose from shattered kingdoms, and rivers ran black with the memory of wrath. But through the scars of earth, a light began to pierce, a light that was not of the sun but of glory itself. The promise long written in prophecy was now unfolding before every eye. The Son of Man was returning, not in humility but in unchallengeable authority. The nations trembled. Mountains melted before his coming, and oceans folded in upon themselves. The heavens split, and the armies of God rode behind him, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. Their banners were not of conquest but of completion. "Behold," cried Michael, "he comes with the clouds, and every eye shall see him." Trumpets blazed, not the trumpets of warning but of fulfillment. The sky itself became a scroll, rolling away to reveal the eternal throne behind the storm. And there, descending upon a cloud brilliant as lightning, stood the Christ. His feet touched the earth and the ground bowed. Every stone, every root, every grain of dust remembered its maker. The sound of his presence shook the bones of the mountains. The survivors of the earth looked up, and their hearts failed within them. Some fell in worship. Others turned away, their souls unable to bear the gaze of truth. His voice was both thunder and whisper, law and love, judgment and mercy intertwined. "The hour has come," he said. "The kingdoms of this world have become the kingdom of my Father." Around him angels gathered the nations. From every continent, from every tongue, the multitudes were drawn, those who had survived the fire, the famine and the war. They stood in awe as the heavens shone above them. Then before all creation the Son raised his hand. "Now," he said, shall the world be divided as the shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. To his right, the light grew warm and gentle, to his left, it dimmed into shadow. No words of argument rose, for every heart knew its own truth. To those on his right, he spoke with a voice that carried both joy and reverence. Come, you blessed of my Father. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. And in that moment, the faithful felt the weight of every tear, every prayer, every act of faith rewarded. Not by merit but by grace. They saw in his eyes the reflection of every moment mercy had carried them when strength had failed. Around them angels sang, not songs of triumph but of reunion. The world that had been broken began to breathe again. Then he turned to those on his left. The silence deepened. Depart from me, he said, for I was hungry and you gave me no food, I was thirsty and you gave me no drink. You saw me and turned away. His words were not anger, they were truth unveiled. Those who had chosen darkness now stood within it, seeing at last what they had loved. They called upon mountains to fall upon them, upon rocks to cover them, but no shadow could hide them from the light of revelation. The judgment was not cruelty, it was consequence. Every deed now spoke for itself. Lightning crossed the heavens. The earth shook as the division was sealed. Those who belonged to the light were lifted, their faces shining with the reflection of their king. The sky burned with color, gold and crimson, sapphire and white, as if all creation were weeping and rejoicing at once. For the curse had been broken, yet the weight of history lay heavy upon the world. From the ashes of nations rose a quiet wind, carrying the scent of rain, of renewal yet to come. Jesus stood upon the mountain, his gaze sweeping across the remnants of the earth. Every valley, every ruin, every scar bore witness to the justice that had been fulfilled. Yet his expression was not wrath, it was sorrow mingled with hope. It is finished, he said, and the sound rippled through time itself. Rivers calmed, the stars steadied, and the breath of creation returned. Heaven and earth met in one vast silence. In that silence, something began to stir, a promise older than the stars, whispered through prophets and sealed in blood. The old world had ended, but its ashes glowed with the color of dawn. Angels lifted their eyes toward the horizon, where a new radiance began to form, a city not built by hands descending like light upon the waters. For though judgment had fallen, redemption had not withdrawn. And as the king raised his hand once more, the heavens prepared for what was coming next, a revelation so vast that even eternity leaned forward to behold it. The thunder faded, and for the first time since time began, there was silence, not the silence of dread but of completion. The storm had passed, the swords were lowered, and the echo of judgment drifted into eternity like smoke dissolving in the wind. What remained was light, pure, endless and alive. The king stood upon the earth, and his glory filled everything that once had been broken. The scars of creation began to heal beneath his feet. Mountains rose again, rivers found their course, and the air itself seemed to breathe peace. The world that had groaned for redemption was finally answered. Then the voice that had formed the galaxy spoke once more, "Behold, I make all things new." Those words rolled through the heavens like a tide of living fire. The old order, the pain, the decay, the memory of death, began to fade like mist before the dawn. The seas calmed. The sun rose not from the east but from the presence of the Lamb himself. The light was different now, soft yet unending, strong yet gentle. Its brilliance did not wound the eyes, it mended the heart. And all who stood before him knew that creation was not being replaced, it was being reborn. From the horizon, something wondrous began to appear. A city, vast as eternity and radiant as a bride adorned for her husband, descended from the heavens. Its walls shone like jasper, its foundations were jewels of every color known and unknown. 12 gates of pearl stood open, each guarded by an angel whose eyes reflected the peace of the Almighty. Upon those gates were written the names of the tribes of Israel, and upon the foundations, the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. The streets shimmered as glass lit by sunrise. There was no temple there, for the Lord himself was its sanctuary. The air was music without sound. The ground was gold that did not glitter but glowed with life. Michael and Gabriel stood at the threshold, beholding the city with wonder. "The dwelling of God is now among men," Gabriel whispered. And indeed, the voice from the throne declared, "They shall be my people, and I shall dwell among them. There will be no more death, nor mourning, nor crying, nor pain, for the former things have passed away." The words became light, and the light became reality. The tears of ages were wiped away, not by wind or time but by the hand of God himself. The sorrow of all generations was swallowed by the joy of one eternal morning. The redeemed entered the city in silence, awestruck by its perfection. There was no need for sun or moon, for the glory of God was its light, and the Lamb was its lamp. The nations walked by that light, their wounds healed, their enmity forgotten. From the center of the city flowed a river clear as crystal, proceeding from the throne of God and of the Lamb. On either side of the river grew the tree of life, bearing 12 kinds of fruit, one for each month of the eternal year. Its leaves were for the healing of the nations. Every breath taken there was worship, every heartbeat was peace. As the angels watched, they saw children playing in fields of light, elders walking with renewed strength, and those once broken in body or spirit now radiant and whole. There were no shadows of guilt, no memory of sorrow, only the deep understanding that all had been redeemed, that love had triumphed beyond imagination. The music of creation rose, not as song but as harmony between God and his people. Heaven and earth, once divided, now beat with a single rhythm, the pulse of divine life shared forever. In the midst of that splendor, the Lamb sat upon his throne, and from his gaze flowed an ocean of peace. Around him, multitudes that no man could number bowed in reverence, not in fear but in gratitude. They wore robes white as light and bore crowns that reflected his glory back to him. Their voices rose as one, declaring, "Worthy is the Lamb who was slain, to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing." The echo of their praise filled every corner of creation. The curse was broken. The story of redemption had reached its final word. Even the angels, who had never known sin, felt awe deeper than ever before. For in the victory of the Lamb, they saw not only power but mercy, not only justice but love perfected. Michael lowered his head, his armor gleaming beneath the eternal light. "It is finished," he said, "and it is good." Raphael smiled, his wings reflecting the glow of the river. "The wounds of creation have been healed," he replied. "And the heart of God has made his home with his children." Heaven was no longer distant. It was here, woven into every breath, every heartbeat, every ray of eternal morning. The city stretched beyond sight, yet every soul felt near to its center. There were no barriers, no borders, no fear of losing what had been given. Eternity was not an endless stretch of time, it was the fullness of joy unending. Life no longer counted by days or years but by the depth of communion with the Creator. The stars themselves seemed to join in the dance of renewal, their light bending in worship to the King enthroned among men. And yet, amid the peace, a quiet understanding lingered. This was not merely the end of the story, it was the beginning of all stories to come. The universe had been remade, not into something unfamiliar, but into what it had always been meant to be, a reflection of perfect love. Every question found its answer, every longing its rest. The Lamb's wounds still shone, not as scars but as reminders that glory was born from sacrifice. From the heart of the new world rose a breeze carrying the scent of eternal spring. Flowers that had never wilted swayed in rhythm with the laughter of the redeemed. The voice of the Almighty whispered through the air once more, "To the thirsty I will give water without cost from the spring of the water of life. He who overcomes shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son." The promise was fulfilled. The dwelling of heaven was with mankind. The old had passed away, the new had come. And as the river of life flowed on without end, the city shone brighter still, its light not merely seen but felt, pulsing with the heartbeat of the one who reigns forever and ever. And in that endless light, creation rested, not in stillness but in peace beyond all measure. For love, once crucified, now ruled the universe. The beginning had returned to the beginning, and eternity stretched out like a sunrise that would never fade. The light of the new creation shimmered without shadow. The river of life flowed through the streets of gold, carrying with it the laughter of the redeemed. The Lamb reigned in peace, and the song of heaven filled every breath. Yet as eternity began, the memory of the old world remained, not as sorrow but as wisdom. The redeemed remembered what it had cost for light to conquer darkness, and their gratitude became their crown. For in the heart of the new heaven and the new earth, every soul understood that love had been the purpose all along. Around the throne, the multitude stood clothed in white, their faces aglow with a joy that never dimmed. There was no more night, no more hunger or thirst, no need for temples or suns. The glory of God filled all things. Yet even in that perfection, one question echoed gently across the golden streets: how shall we live now that all is fulfilled? The answer came not as a command but as an invitation. For the gates of eternity are not only the end of the journey, they are the beginning of a new walk with the one who made all things new. Heaven was not stillness, it was harmony. Life pulsed like a heartbeat from the throne, flowing through the redeemed and back again in endless worship. Those who once carried sorrow now carried songs. Those who bore wounds now bore witness. Every story that had been marked by suffering now revealed its purpose in the greater melody of grace. The martyrs who had given their lives for truth walked side by side with the forgiven who had once wandered in darkness. There were no ranks, no distance, only oneness in the love of the Lamb. Eternity was not about rest from life, but life without end, forever alive in the glory of God. And yet, for those still bound to time, for those who read the words of prophecy and still walk the earth, the message of eternity is a call, not a memory. The vision of the end is a warning and a promise: be ready. The same voice that said, "It is finished," also said, "Behold, I am coming soon." Blessed is the one who keeps the words of this prophecy. For the story of Revelation is not merely a glimpse of what will be, it is a mirror of what is already unfolding in the hearts of men. Each generation lives on the edge of eternity, one breath away from the return of the King. The path to that readiness is not fear but faith. Jesus did not reveal the end to terrify, but to awaken. "Watch therefore," he said, "for you do not know the hour your Lord is coming." Those words are not a threat, they are an act of mercy. They remind the living that the kingdom of God is not waiting in the distance, it is already at the door. The signs of the times are whispers of grace, urging hearts to turn, to lift their eyes from the dust of the world to the brilliance of heaven's promise. The apocalypse is not destruction for destruction's sake, it is purification. It is the fire that burns away illusion so that truth might stand unveiled. For the faithful, preparation begins within. It is not the storing of bread or the building of walls, but the cleansing of the heart. Repentance is not punishment, it is restoration. To repent is to return to the voice that called us before the foundations of the world. To pray is to breathe with the rhythm of eternity. Every whispered prayer, every act of mercy, every secret kindness done in the name of love echoes forever in the courts of heaven. The smallest obedience on earth becomes the brightest jewel in the eternal city. The kingdom that awaits is not won by strength, but received by surrender. There will come days of trial and testing. Scripture has promised it. The love of many will grow cold. The earth will groan once more as it did in ages past. But the faithful must stand firm. Their endurance will not be in vain. He who overcomes shall inherit all things. The call is to persevere, to hold fast when the world trembles, to cling to hope when the night grows long. For faith is not proven in calm seas but in the storm. And those who endure will see the dawn that never fades. While time endures, the mission remains. To live at the gates of eternity is to bear witness of the one who reigns beyond them. The redeemed are not called to escape the world, but to shine within it, to be light in the valley, salt on the wound, and truth in the midst of confusion. Jesus said, "You are the light of the world." That light is not our own, it is the reflection of his face upon ours. To forgive when others hate, to love when others turn away, to pray when others despair, these are the ways we prepare for the coming of the King. The testimony of Christ is written not in words, but in lives transformed by his grace. So then let every heart live ready. Let the watchman stand upon the wall and not grow weary. Let the weary soul lift its eyes from the dust and remember that the crown awaits. Let every tear shed in faith become a seed in eternity. The time is not for fear but for faithfulness. The same hand that wrote the end of the world also writes a new beginning for all who believe. For the one who promised is faithful, and his word endures forever. The Apostle John, when he saw these visions, fell on his face in awe. The angel who showed him the city said, "These words are true and faithful." And John heard the voice of Jesus saying, "Behold, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. Surely I am coming soon." To which the church throughout every generation has replied, "Even so, come, Lord Jesus." This is the cry that keeps the lamps burning, the hearts watchful, and the hope alive. For the story of Revelation is not a tale to fear, it is a promise to embrace. It reminds the living that beyond every war, every sorrow, every tear, there is a throne that stands unshaken. Beyond the final trumpet, there is a voice that still calls to mercy. Beyond the fall of nations, there is a kingdom that will never end. And beyond the last breath of time, there is life, real, eternal, and radiant in the presence of God. So live now as citizens of that kingdom. Walk in faith. Clothe yourself in humility. Keep your lamp filled with oil, your heart steadfast in prayer, your eyes fixed on the horizon of glory. For the King who came once in humility will return in majesty. The gates of eternity stand open, and the invitation still echoes through creation. Whoever is thirsty, let him come. Whoever desires, let him take the water of life freely. And as the final light of heaven glows upon the renewed earth, a single truth reigns supreme: love has conquered all. The story that began with creation ends in communion. The promise that was spoken in Eden is fulfilled in eternity. And the voice of the redeemed rises like a river across the endless dawn. To him who sits upon the throne, and to the Lamb, be blessing and honor and glory and power forever and ever. The vision fades, but its truth remains. The end of the world is not the end of hope. It is the beginning of home.